I am going to say something up here, and at the top of your lungs, you're going to offer the response that comes to your brain right off the bat. It's got to be loud. It's got to be once. Are you ready? If I say, Sweet Caroline.
Bum, bum, bum.
It works. You're awake. This is great. Excellent. So, a few of you have come over and said thank you for the book. You've read some of my books. I'm very appreciative. Every time I go to a conference and somebody comes up to me and says, hey, the books were of value, I feel like they're coming up and saying that they really like my children. So I appreciate that. Thank you for that. The presentation today is a little bit different. It's not going to be about product. It's not going to be about deployment, but it's going to be about something that's at the very heart of everything you do every day. Now, before I dive into it, I want to let you know that before you put me on the kids' table, meaning that this is different, right? So I should be sitting at the children's table instead of the adult table. Everything we're going to talk about today comes from my experience implementing CRM projects and technology, and the fact that for many years, the things that we talk about in terms of technology implementation, application, end result has everything to do with expectations, the way we manage expectations. So I'm going to challenge you to do a couple of things today. One, I want you to think about this in terms of how you interact with your clients today, how you're implementing technology, how you're having those very important expectation conversations with your clients about the outcomes they expect and what those outcomes are. And secondly, and it may sound a little strange to you, I also want you to think of it in terms of your relationship with Resco. I want you to think about what they're offering you, the things that you're doing from day to day to implement product, and the relationship that you yourself have as a partner or as a customer, that at the end of the day you can say, hey, I am really getting the value that I need based on this relationship, and it's a relationship of equity, it's a relationship of fairness, in the same way that you expect those outcomes to be fair and equitable in your relationships with your clients. Now, the big promise that I want to make you today is that the stuff that we're going to talk about today, even though you may not see some of the smaller stuff, is important because it has tremendous business value. And what I mean by that is that, you could be a system architect, you could be a salesperson, you can be in the RevOps side of things, selling software or implementing software. You may be the person that's coming in to elicit requirements from a client. You may be the partner that's selling the value and trying to sit at the table with the main stakeholders. No matter who you are, no matter what you do, the end result of everything you do and every expectation that you should manage should have something to do with acquisition results, retention results, enrichment results, and advocacy results. Why? Because there's no greater ROI in any business if what we do and the expectations that we manage in some way, directly or indirectly, results in, for the client and for your business, in greater acquisition, greater retention, greater enrichment of the sale and the relationship, and the expansion of the implementation of products and sales, and ultimately, customers talking on your behalf to other people about how they advocate in behalf of your company and also on behalf of the product that you sell and implement. If you can do that at every aspect of acquisition, retention, implementation, enrichment, advocacy, at every stage and any time that needs, circumstances, characteristics, any change, capacity in the life of the client, then guess what? The ROI is going to go up, and you can almost guarantee that you're going to have repeat business, that you're going to have greater conversations during the implementation of technology as well. Now, any of you who've ever heard me speak know that I don't say anything or do anything without telling a story. So, you mind if I tell you a story? Can I tell you a story, the 20 minutes we have? Really? Do you want to hear a story? Yes, of course you want to hear a story. So, I was in Orange County some years ago. I was speaking at an event. I got really excited because I was planning to do something really fun at the end of the event. So I did my keynote, I walked out the door, went out, did my thing, and realized I had not secured a place to stay for the following night before coming home. So I went on Airbnb, and I found this, $78 for the night, and I thought, this is great. It has a bed, it has a cloning machine of some sort, cryogenic station. I don't know what that is, right? And then next to it has a bathroom with all the things that you'll need for the night, someplace to get a shower and someplace to use the restroom. Here's the problem with that. That is what I was getting online or thought I was getting online, and this is what I got. Okay? Now, some of you are looking at that and thinking, hey, that looks an awful lot like a bathroom with a bed on the floor. Well, you're completely wrong. What I ended up with was a bathroom with a bed on the floor, right? And I don't know if you can see this, but my bag is right there. And the reason for that is because there's no other room. You walk in the door, you put your backpack down, I had my water on it, and there you go. What made this worse is that wasn't even a bed. You guys know what a futon bed is, a futon chair? And it has 2x4 wood in the back. They had left that on it. So when they laid it on the floor, and I laid down for the first time as I was calling my lovely wife, who happens to be with me, by the way, on this trip, I just couldn't sleep. And so I stayed up, and it was extremely uncomfortable. And there's more to the story online if you want to see it. It's also in the book. I won't bore you with that, and we don't have time for it. But it always surprises me that anytime that I talk to my students, and I have the pleasure of lecturing or teaching customer experience or human-centered design thinking at 28 universities going now. And so I use this as an exercise, and I tell them the story of the things that I went online to get and what I ended up getting as an outcome. And inevitably, every single time, they'll all go through this measurement back and forth that has a direct relationship with the things that they expect based on who they are, where they come from, their culture, and many other things. So conversations usually go like this. I'll say, oh my gosh, and I went to Airbnb and I got this room and I ended up having to leave for the airport the next day. What do you think about that? And so they'll go through this list. First thing that comes up on the list, well, did you get what you expected? And I said, well, I wasn't expecting a bed on the floor, so no, I didn't get what I expected. However, when I did get there, as I started defining value on the expectations that I had about this place, really, in the end, what was I looking for? I was looking for a place to sleep, a shower to shower in, and a place to clone myself. So I ended up exactly what I was looking for. And then they'll move through things like, they'll kind of think about value for a little bit and whether I got it, and then they start jumping into, well, did you contact anybody? How did you contact them? Did you email them? Did you call them on the phone? Was the person there for you to speak with them and engage with them and connect with them? And then they move on to conversations about themselves, right? And some of them will say, well, I was in the military in the U.S., right? We all talk about the military. I was in the Air Force 10 years, and the military guys, especially the Marines, will say, well, I was in the Marine Corps for 10 years, and we laid stuff on the floor, on the ground, in the grass, and we slept out in the stars, and so that wasn't that big a deal for me. And then they move into conversations about who was responsible. Oh man, these are good ones, right? Because it's like, who is going to be responsible for solving this problem? The accountability question, followed by the questions of knowledge and skills. In other words, did you do your due diligence? Did you look at the website? Did you make sure whose job was it, but whose fault was it? And who had the knowledge and skill to make the right decisions and set the right expectations? They ultimately fall through a list of things that have to do with all the things that I listed, along with questions about expectations that have to do with level of transparency. And this one really nailed me, right? This is a tough one because I don't believe that the person that put that posting online was being very transparent. As a matter of fact, if you want to rent this room, it's now available for $110 US, and you can spend the night at JC's bed on the floor in the bathroom any time of the year, right? Still the wrong description, still very misleading pictures. At the end of all this, we kind of summarize things into something that we've learned to, or tried to learn to measure correctly, something we call the customer experience. And because it is a customer experience class, we kind of go through measurements like, did you get what you needed? If they were rating NPS score, Net Promoter Score, what score do you think they'd get? And a number of many other things. I bring up this story when I talk to technology people, especially with my history all the way back to sales logics. Anyone remember sales logics back in the day? ACT and sales logics? All the way back in the very beginning of what we call CRM. as I talk to people who are in technology and who implement technology, ultimately somebody brings up this quote. How many have seen that quote before? 67%, it's always said in a really negative way, right? 67% of CRM projects fail, right? And I say, when we look at the research and the original quote, no one has ever said that. In fact, the reality is, and we have recent studies from CIO Magazine and Forrester that say that more projects, because of people being smarter, people being more able, people being more skilled, people being more experienced, more technology projects come in on time and meet project expectations, and more technology investments being made today than ever before in the history of technology. So how can it be that we say that the projects are coming in on time, that technology is great, that technology like Microsoft technology is going to have an increase in technology investment up to an additional $1 billion a year with Copilot coming into the fold, and yet we're still saying things like 67% of CRM projects fail? Well, the reason is that that quote is misquoted. The fact is that the research done by the Aberdeen Group many years ago and then followed by a number of different people that did this follow-up studies, the real quote says that 67% of implementation of technology, including CRM, are you watching that? Fails to meet what? Say it out loud, say it again. It fails to meet expectations. So, instead of making all this investment in technology fixes, why don't we take what we have, things that we know work, and switch gears and start doing things like recognizing that we know a lot about the way that all these people who are buying the product, all the stakeholders who are using it, the user, the implementer, and why don't we go back to understanding the psychology that has to do with the one thing that's causing technology to fail, and that is the management of expectations, right? I mean, if you can do that, then you can drive right down to the problem itself, and then apply some of the things that we've learned from human-centered design, put the psychology of expectation management together, and then measure it using things that we know from Forrester work. And that is measuring things in terms of the outcomes people expect. And what I mean by that is that a lot has been done by Forrester. It was sort of refreshed in the book Outside In recently, that say that if you, as an implementer, user of technology, and incidentally, this applies with your business relationships and your interpersonal relationships too, that if you have the right dialogue without fluff, without overinflating the acumen of your people and the spectacular things that technology does, if you can drive down to ask questions about functionality, things about the success they expect, things about the level of effort that it takes to implement that and use that technology, and the emotional context that's applied and the way people feel in using that technology to lead to their outcomes, then there's a likelihood that people are going to implement what you're giving them, right? If you can connect things like functionality, right? And I don't mean just the features. I mean, functionality X leads to result Y. The effectiveness of this product leads to the effectiveness of this function. The ease of use of the technology leads to the ease of accomplishment of this specific business outcome. If I use technology to get to data that I need, to mine it, to use AI to get to it and give me the result I need, in order to give people accessibility to making decisions, if I can go to the emotional side of things and make people feel the way they expect, which is people want to feel good about using technology, then I have a greater chance of meeting the expectations of people than if I sit there and teach them features. Does that make sense? So, I have 2 minutes left, and I want to go through this together because there's a tremendous ROI to doing this. And I showed it to you at the beginning, having to do with acquisition, retention, and other things, right? The problem with getting to the conversations is that they have to be framed in the right way. So I'm going to teach you today, I'm going to teach you a new frame for having conversations with people. And I'm going to do it very quickly. But I want you to think about actual moments in your life, right? I want you to think about actual moments where if you're in sales, you're sitting down with a client and you're trying to understand their outcomes and objectives. I want you to think about you implementing technology and sitting down doing a project and having that conversation about how this project is going to be laid out and what outcomes are going to result from it. Because if you don't do this within the right framework, then you end up with conversations that are purely subjective. Purely subjective conversations are extremely dangerous because you never know who's going to pull the trump card, right? And say, that's not what I said, right? So I'm talking about down to the level of documentation and making sure that the following 7 things are included in your conversations with clients at every point, right? These 7 things from left to right are part of the framework, and chances are that you're already doing these things if you group them a little different, because today you're already defining the nature of the outcomes that you're implementing through technology. You're already defining the terms of how the project's going to go, how long it's going to be, how much you're going to pay. And to some extent, although we don't do it that greatly, to some extent you're also setting the stage for what the experience is going to look like. Okay? So here's what conversations should look like to you. And there's 7 of them that reduce the paralysis of outcomes in every project and every business interaction. Number 1, we have 5 kids together, my wife and I. We've always taken them out into the woods. If we're running through the woods together and a bear came out, I would not say, she's got it. We got her a teddy bear for Christmas, right? A teddy bear for Christmas, buying that for a child does not prepare them for actually preparing for a bear in the woods. And so we kind of take that approach with value, which is just because you think that there's value in what you're delivering doesn't mean that the client thinks that there's value in the delivery. So conversations about value need to be about the value that each stakeholder expects using social exchange theory, which means here's the reward I'm giving you, here's what it's costing you to get it, that's the real outcome. And that may not be financial or functional, it may be in terms of aggravation and other things. Number 2, big red times up. Number 2, who people are as individuals. Number 3, how they measure relevance and engagement, how they expect to communicate. Accountability and knowledge, which we talked about earlier. And then the 2 other things, which are about level of transparency they expect and what they expect from the experience. And I'm sorry that I flew through that. You're going to be getting this, but I want to leave you with a thought, which is, what would happen if today you sat back at the table with your clients and said, in all honesty and transparency, you know what? I don't think we set expectations correctly in this project or this engagement or this contract. Let's back up a little bit and let's walk through these 5 things together. What types of results and outcomes do you think you'd get? And what type of relationship do you think you would end up building with them as a relationship of longevity and long term than just going out and implementing technology that's purely based on the value of the functionality that the technology offers? If you want to learn more about this, and this is a terrible thing to do, but if you want to learn more about this, we built a training module online that launches August 11th. And that's the course, and that's the code to take it for free. But there's only 25 free codes. So you can fight it out. I'll let you fight it out. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed that.